Larry. How are you? Happy February.
Yes, how you doing, Cheryl? Well, I can tell you that I am sitting in the middle of a snowmageddon apparently here on the East Coast. Good time.
I
Yeah,
keep hearing about that. I keep hearing about that.
yeah. Lucky you. In California is where I don't think you get too many snowmageddons, but
Not at
you
all.
gotta deal with. But I don't mind the snow every once in a while. It's nice to have a change of scenery, and it's good to get cold. Good to feel uncomfortable a little bit. That's
Exactly.
the spice of life,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Exactly. That's what I'm told. I don't mind. And I'm back there, I was just back there last month, so I got to experience the cold and a little snow, and I did a little cross country skiing, and it was very pleasant. It was pleasant.
Peaceful. I find peace in the cold.
Yes.
It's funny. You would think that you would find peace in like, comfortable outside, but I actually find comfort sometimes in the cold because of the uncomfortableness of what that is. It almost kind of makes you more aware, I guess, in some ways, right?
Yeah,
So, uh,
absolutely.
but feeling uncomfortable kind of, I guess, brings us to a little bit of the topic that I think we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. As we were kind of honing in on, this time and starting to think about our conversation, what we might talk about, what was top of mind for me was, even though we ended January here in the Bay Area with a just springy, balmy weekend, which was lovely. I did a lot of outdoors, hiking and enjoying, basically what was t-shirt weather at the end of January. um, but
Jealous.
what I was really, I know, sorry to rub it in, but what I was really feeling was just like, wow, that was quite the month. It was a long month. And but what I found fascinating for myself was, despite it just like feeling the weight of, you know, what was a long, dramatic, kind of intense month in many levels, I just had locked in personally in this very disciplined, very persistent, approach to the things I know I do on a daily basis that make me feel, that keep me up here as opposed to down here, right? Is
Yeah.
the way I like to think about it. And it was just like this dogged persistence for me, and just staying on it, and not in a way that like I in a way that it was that felt has felt great, but at the same time, you know the way I could describe it was like, even though I feel like this little tug to like, well, something is, wanting to kind of yank me down, but I'm just staying up here with these like daily things, daily habits that I know just add up, because I've just seen it, right? I see it, I feel it. I know they add up to my just being able to kind of stay up here and buoyant in all of this, And so that was kind of like what was top of mind for me for the month of January. Was just getting through all that, and I know, as you have a lot of thoughts on the matter as well, which is exciting. I love when we are able to, mind meld.
Yeah, there's a lot of science of how people are connected and on the same wavelength right now as they're showing, and we are on this particular topic because as you were kind of um, looking at it all and finding your discipline as a way of getting through the chaos and the struggle and kind of keeping things moving for you. I was really thinking about that in the sense of discipline, and we've talked about this on our previous podcast. We've talked about discipline and the importance of discipline, right? But I think there's more to discipline that comes with actually taking the right steps and actually doing things, right? Like you said, I kept my discipline. There's a reason why you still did it, right? And I think it's a combination of um, a why, which kind of ties to the um, uh, like your vision of who you want to be and your identity and all that kind of stuff. But then I think there's also about your approach to discipline, right? And so when I look at discipline, I see kind of three things going on, right? I see this discipline, right, which is you find freedom through discipline, right? More chaos, I think you need to be more disciplined, and I think it just sparks things down the road for you that just kind of all of a sudden you wake up one day and after all this discipline that you did, it's like, oh my God, what did I accomplish? I can't believe what I accomplished, right? But to achieve that, to actually practice discipline, I think we have two other components that we need to look at. One being energy, right? Our willpower, right? Our willingness to go, which I think is very tied to our approach to things, right? Which is why I think a crawl, walk, run approach is always the answer. And then I think
Absolutely.
on the other side, I think it's about faith, right? And I think the ultimate goal for everyone on this planet is having faith within themselves, right? But we struggle, right? We have this little voice sitting on our shoulder that tells us we're not good enough, or judges us, right? And tells us that no, you can never be this or that. And I think when we find ourselves, which could, many people right now, I think are in a position of where that voice is really overbearing. um, I think we have to find faith outside ourselves, right? Find faith in something else, right? Find hope, right? I'm using the word faith. Hope is another kind of term I think that we can use interchangeable here, right? And I think that hope, that faith, the right approach, and just looking at it through a disciplined lens, right? I think can help you get to wherever it needs to be. And you really don't need to be fully 100% knowing the end goal. You don't need to have a clear vision of what the end result needs to be. It's just a culmination of things to get you to move,
Yes.
right? And kind of live into your answers at the end of the day, right? So for me, I like to really, hone in on picking small little things to do, and then I show up,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something that anybody can do. I don't care who you are, right? If you can just get a little willpower, and we can get into how you do that, and if you get a little faith, and we can talk about that too, and then you just get the discipline of the schedule and the organization and whatnot, and you just show up, everyone can show up. That's a
Yeah.
choice. That is something you are in control of, right? And so I think when you're doing your weekend of the end of the month and get the beauty of some nice weather, and get to experience what that looks like, I bet you in some ways you probably felt a level of exhaustion, but I bet you felt a level of accomplishment, right? And like, wow, I got through it and I feel good, and probably built some faith. So I'm curious, like when you look at that and you look at your process, like how did you really feel in those moments? Because I think you work, and then you all of a sudden you come up and you're like, wow, I really got through it, and that feels good inside, and then that gives you energy to move to the next month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Oh, there's so much like from what you just said that I could talk about. It's just wonderful. And I think um and I know when you first, mentioned this sort of discipline, energy, and faith, I felt like it really kind of captured my experience of the month. And I think, kind of coming into January, and I know, I had spent the end of the year, the holiday with family, and definitely, indulging, doing all the things. I think we talked about that last time. Um, and so it took quite a bit of faith in the beginning of the month to get back and to get back in things. And I do think like that component is so important. It's like, you know, when you take that first step, when you're doing the crawl, walk, run, that first crawl, it's like, okay, is this really going to help? Is this really going to do anything? Like this sucks right now. So I'll use running as the kind of frame for this. From my experience over the past month, I had decided that I wanted to get back, like I just want to get back into my running game because, I had sort of shifted to doing other kinds of exercise, which is great, but I I really enjoy running. There's a lot of reasons why I like it. And in particular, not only just how I feel physically, but mentally, it's like a great time for me to kind of process things, to I get ideas, and I kind of miss that. And while I had been running, I was running at such a level where it was a slog. Like every time I went out kind of sucked, I'd have to stop a lot. It was just I was never getting to that place of feeling good. So I decided at the beginning of the month that I was going to get back in it. And I know for myself, especially, I have to do crawl, walk, run because, I can't just set out like my body just doesn't allow, it just stops me at some point.
Right.
I can only go so far, but I had been there before. I had done this before and knew that if I just add the 10% every week, if I just try to go a little bit farther without breaking, without taking a break every week on my runs and just build that consistency over time, it'll get better. And so that was my decision for the month. And I did. I had faith. I had faith because I had done this before many, many, many years ago when I first started running. And I literally could only run like 8/10 of a mile. And it sucked hard, And I got to the point where I was doing half marathons back then. And I remembered from back then that there was a certain pace at which I felt great. Like it's not a fast pace, like by any stretch compared to like professional runners. But for me, I feel like I'm flying, and that's
Yeah.
all that matters. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
flying.
Absolutely.
And so that's the goal I've set for myself. I want to get back to that pace because I know at that pace, it's like, woohoo, like I'm flying through the streets of San Francisco. I feel great. And then also I know when I'm in that zone, I can get it's around about the 4 mile mark where I get that sort of runner's high. But up until and before then, I'm not getting the runner's high, right? But I have faith. I know I've been there before, and I know it's just going to take persistence. It's going to just take showing up with energy. And here's the great thing: is that by the end of this month, I am doing I'm doing a 5K twice a week. I do an out and back, and I pause at the halfway point and stretch. You know, but I can get all the way out there without a break, and then maybe on the way back, I take one more little kind of get my breath break, and then I'm working on improving my pace slowly over time. But I'm at this place now, whereas at the beginning of the month, it was like I couldn't maybe 8/10 of a mile before I had to break. It was a slog. It was painful. Now I can do this full 5K and I'm feeling good by the end of it. Like, like energized by the end of it. And that, like that, yeah. And that's why I do it. Like, that's why it's like I have faith and know that it's the kind of thing, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's like the more I show up with discipline and persistence, the more rewards I reap from this, right? And because yeah, I'm feeling good, like physically feeling better than I felt I mean, I'm always sort of playing around with like these levels of how good I can feel.
Yeah.
But it's like feeling really good right now. And I love that. And that's why this topic was sort of top of mind for me. And then, but like I said, when you said faith, it's like it got me thinking about the beginning of that journey, right? The beginning of that journey and just needing to step out there and do it, even though it sucked. But knowing and believing that if I just show up every day, you know, then it's become self-perpetuating.
Absolutely. What you just said to me just sparked something. I was trying to look for the exact kind of quote from something that I read in Atomic Habits. Habits.
Mm.
Um, First off, like I have found um, things worth doing are not easy. Like, like,
So true.
um, you know, expanding ourselves, growing, our health, right? At the end of the day, like there are so many things out there that make it easy to be unhealthy that it's hard. And what ends up happening is when we look at concepts of just being on the topic of health, right? Like you're talking about running, right? The anticipation of running, going for a run, gives you no gratification, right? There's no dopamine release that says, oh my God, I can't wait to have my sneakers on and run and like this, that, and the other. It happens sometimes, but like at the end of the day, the idea of putting yourself through something that is uncomfortable for the body and exerting and doing all this stuff and sweating and all this stuff, like people do it because it's their discipline. Like they don't think about it; they just go do it because they need to go do it because it means something, right? They know that it has this association. They have faith in that, right? So they've now rooted in that discipline. So it's like things that are hard don't give rewards in the beginning, right? The rewards come after,
Yeah.
right? And that's one of the things that we have to be cognizant of. And even in the concept of um, discomfort, right? Like growth is uncomfortable, right? Like doing something new is uncomfortable. Like it takes finding faith in why it's and why you're doing it. It's finding the willpower to push yourself forward to try it or do it, right? And then staying disciplined, and depending on how big is it, like how disciplined and focused you plan it out to make it work. And I, I look at for me, what I have faith in is like, if it's easy, like, I don't know, like to me, it's probably not helping me grow. So, like, having this growth mindset, I know that I try to put
Yeah.
myself in deliberate, discomfortable situations, and that's it. Right. And I look at your running situation, it's like you found feeling of accomplishment. You probably found a feeling of fulfillment in what your discipline of running gave you at that stage of your life, and you put faith in that, and that you
Yeah.
can revive that during a time of chaos and something that you lost, right? So you found your faith, you polished off that discipline, and then in a crawl you very quickly were able to say, here's my willpower and energy that I can do, and I can put it out. And then you're just gonna, like, one day at a time, right? One step
Mm.
forward, one movement, till eventually it starts to get easier and easier and easier and easier and easier, and then voila, right? Now it just becomes
Voila.
part of your kind of
What's next?
unconscious competence of life, right? Which is great.
You know what's kind of funny that because you say this and it's intriguing. I've also in the um, so the my playlist for running lately has been it's like a band that I was listening to back then.
Mm.
And it's just as I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it, but because there will definitely be moments, especially after the first mile after I've kind of warmed up, where I feel good. Like literally it feels good to be out there running. And also because I'm listening to this music, right? That just and it just brings like kind of this just rushes of of positive feeling, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm practically singing like on my run, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just funny because it's funny that I sort of glommed onto this one particular band I haven't listened to in a really long time. But as soon as I think about it, oh, that was the music I was listening to back then, right? When I was in this kind of peak in sort of feeling great, sort of physically and running a lot. And it just brings back, it's like just another sort of sense, right? That is that helps me kind of connect to these positive feelings, right? And for me, it's I mean, I've definitely over the past, especially the past decade, can find a lot of I'm trying to like joy in things that are uncomfortable, right? Like I did like a polar bear. It wasn't like a really intense polar bear because it was the fall. Um, but did a swim, in Maine, did a little Wim Hof breathing and jumped in the water and sure it was just uncomfortable, but it was super fun. Like it felt great. There is a place where you can get to where like these sort of physical discomforts you sort of transcend. They're not like you just see them as experiences, right? Like anything. Um, and then and yeah, and they sort of make up the sort of tapestry of like what you're experiencing in the moment. Being super comfortable all the time isn't necessarily pleasant either. It can get boring and tedious. Um, so yeah, I've always had that kind of relationship with uncomfortable things where, you know, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. It depends. Like I don't like dental pain. That's just where I draw a line. I never get cool with that.
Yeah, I think that's a universal agreement. I
Yeah,
think
maybe,
I wanna maybe say that's on record. Um,
maybe.
but
But
you
anyway,
never know. I don't know. Dentists might really enjoy it because they must love teeth that much that they get into that.
maybe.
Um, but you're talking about balance, right? And I think one thing that we all need to, like, maybe take a step back from is, like, each person, you're your own person. Your likes, your dislikes, your level of of comfort, your level of discomfort, and what works for you is what works for you. And that's okay, right? Like live your journey. Like don't
Yeah.
live someone else's journey, right? For me, like I'm not one of those extremists. Like I'm not someone, and who knows, I might become one. I have no clue, right? But for right now, my mentality is like I find good in balancing things of that I've started to learn how to do good and I try to make them better and master those. And then there are things that I know like I'm not just going to stay there. I'm also going to do things that are uncomfortable and kind of expand my horizons and know that my experiences on both end bring it all together.
Yeah.
Right. And that I think everyone like that journey for everyone is their own. Right. And uncomfortableness for you in the moment, could be a pole, jumping in an ice bath, right? There are people out there who are, was it David Goggins and like, some of these like, people who I love, right? I just love
Yeah.
watching the resilience and they're like just this attitude that they have. They do things that are like, oh my God, right? But you don't
Yeah.
have to be that. Like the lesson
Yeah.
learned from them is not that you have to go do that. The lesson learned is listen, you need to feel alive. And how do you feel alive?
Yeah.
You put yourself in an uncomfortable position, right? And you go after it and you like just find faith in something and just go for it and just take a chance. And you know what? Just show up. Just show up. If you can't do a pull-up, just freaking try. Like do it. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's the answer. It's just finding it. And I think it's that combination of, finding discipline through your process through your willpower and through your faith. It all is together, and I think that when you apply that to your life, I think you'll start to see
Yeah.
quickly the results will build up, and you'll start to understand what it feels like to get a sense of fulfillment, to
Yeah.
get a sense of peace, to get a sense of accomplishment. And those are the feelings that, like, they're addicting, right?
They
Once you
are.
get them, you start that,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, that's the beauty of it all, right? It's like every little thing that you try, even if it's something that you'll never do again or something that's not for you, they give you, you still feel accomplished. You may be exhausted, but you still feel accomplished. And then you can decide if you want to keep going down that path. But some as Matthew McConaughey says in his book, which I listened to the audiobook and found many profound things in, some are stops and some are stays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's okay, right? That sometimes
Yeah.
certain things are a stop and other things are a stay. And all red lights turn green if you have some
Mhm.
discipline and go there, right? There's reasons for it. So I love what you're saying, and I think to kind of circle back, one of the things I want to like kind of try with this conversation is let's get clear on some clear directive on what
Yeah.
to do, right? Like I'm thinking what I would like to share is how I approached one particular thing that I knew I wanted to do, how I went through it and kind of apply where was the discipline, where was the willpower, and where was kind of the faith that I put in, and just be able to share that with everyone so that they can hear it and maybe they can relate to it. And then something that they're thinking about, they can kind of apply the
Yeah.
same practice as a result.
Yeah, I love that. And let's do that to kind of close it out. Because in this framework, I think is brilliant. So discipline, energy, aka willpower, and faith, aka hope, whatever word works for you, applied to your own individual. Right, we're all different, right? And like as you were talking, I was thinking about you know the pace at which I feel like I'm flying. Who cares what that pace is, right? Like I don't care how it compares to yours or anyone else's. It's the pace at which I feel like I'm flying, and that's what matters to me. So it's like that individual lens, right? To it's about what brings you all those feelings that matter to you, which peace, contentedness, accomplishment, it's what matters to you, and regardless of what is happening outside and what other people are doing and accomplishing. um I love that. And so I think that's, yeah, it's a brilliant way to kind of close and, Because that I've been thinking about that too. Because I see a lot, I still see a lot of folks being dragged down around me. It's tough time right now, and I
Mhm.
want to, like, just get started, because yeah, that's like the only thing you can do, right? To
Yeah.
kind of pull yourself out of it, but go for it.
So I have two parallel examples that I'm going to walk through. Okay. One being meditation and one being reading. Okay. So I'm going to start with kind of the vision and what I was kind of putting faith into. Right. So for meditation, I, as someone who understood how I was with ADHD. Now I've been obviously diagnosed with it. I found myself struggling in the moment. I found that I was reacting to things versus responding to things, and I found myself feeling anxiety, stressed out. And I knew that, and what I had heard was that meditation would allow me to calm down, would allow me to be more centered, would allow me to find awareness and practice awareness so that I can respond to my situations versus reacting, right? So, hearing all these wonderful gurus out in the world that said that that was what would happen when you practice meditation, I put my faith in that to solve the problem of what I saw about myself, right? And I decided, I was like, well, my time is valuable. I'm busy. I have a lot of stuff going on. And being someone who's focused on productivity and how do I go about doing it, I said, all right, um, how can I build this discipline so that I set myself up to succeed? Right. And so I decided to do 5 minutes a day. Right. And I have now, as I teach meditation, preach 5 for 50, 5 minutes for 50 days. Um, and I don't set a lot of rules as far as myself because I know the journey I went through for meditation, but I committed to 5 for 50 days.
Mhm.
And I would do 5 minutes. And I was able to, in my head, find enough willpower to say I could stay committed. It didn't overwhelm my schedule, it didn't overwhelm my commitments. And I went on that journey. Right now, fast forward 10 years plus, right? I now meditate throughout the day. I have moments that I do it. Um, I have a discipline in the morning that I do roughly 35 minutes of meditation in the morning. I play with my meditation. It's now a part of me. It is not effort to do anymore. And the benefits and the feelings and the things that I've accomplished through that practice have been endless for me. Right. But that breaks down like, here's how I approach it. I had a problem. I found faith and hope in something that would help solve this problem. Right. I then broke it down into that crawl, walk, run, which was 5 for 50, and then I went at it. And through that 5 for 50 through meditation, I tried different types of meditation. I did all different types of stuff, but my show up was 5 minutes. And I gave myself enough time to see what those benefits could be.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, another quick example, and I'm not going to go into all of the details of what I just did with meditation, is how I looked at reading, right? ADHD, I would have to read a page 5 times sometimes to comprehend what was on there. I struggled with my whole life. But as someone who is an executive, who is a founder of a company and a leader and like all this stuff, it was like, you got to keep educating. You got to. So I had this thing, I had this problem. I need to learn. I need to listen to others. I need to find mentorship out there. I need to do it. I need to make it happen. I need to read. Right. And so I put faith in what the gurus have said you need to do. So now it was, all right, I'm going to try it. And so I decided 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day, read, that's it. And I did it. And to this day, 12, 13 years later, I have not missed a day ever.
It's awesome.
Right. So, it's very focused on yourself and finding faith in others. It's great to have mentors and have people say, here's something cool that piques your interest, and have hope in that and have faith. But now you got to make it your own, right? So you take it in, and then you pick the smallest thing that doesn't impact your schedule as a lot to give it that try, you know? And my one other rule with it all is, if you want to do more, fine, but you never do less. So you want to meditate for 30 minutes on a day, knock yourself out. But once it hits the 5, you've hit your commitment for the day. So when you do this on the days when it's really stinking hard, you know, you'll feel that self accomplishment, right? And you'll start to work to see what fits for you. And that's, at the end of the day, is what matters. It's what it means for you and the impact for you, right? And shifting from the faith in something else to faith in yourself, and knowing that meditation for me matters, reading for me matters, because it expands all this. I don't need someone else to tell me about it. I experienced it, I get it, I love it, and now I'm going to share that story with everyone else, and then hopefully they may find faith in me, and then they use it.
Yeah, yeah. Love it. Awesome. I love it. It's funny, as you were talking, I get the sense that you are a pretty disciplined person.
Mhm.
Um, I would say, like you, it's a commitment. I'm going to meet the commitment. I generally am like, I've always been someone where I think, one of my feelings, and I'm not a lawbreaker, but rule breaker. If there's a rule, I'm going to, it's to be broken. Maybe a little less, discipline in that way, right? Of like, I made a commitment to myself, I'm going to show up every day. It can be a little bit more challenging in that way. But one of the tricks that's worked for me, as I'm starting to build up habit. So using meditation as an example, and I started meditating about a decade ago, but sometimes I'll kind of fall out of habit, right? And I've gotten back in, and yes, mindfulness is sort of integrated throughout my day, and it's so important. But just really taking that time to kind of be, you know, to really practice mindfulness and meditation can sometimes be challenging. So one of the tricks I use, that might resonate with some listening who maybe have a little harder time with discipline, is just find a way to make it really enjoyable. So sometimes in the beginning, when I'm trying to build up that momentum, that self perpetuating momentum that comes with practice, I have to trick myself a little bit by creating that celebration. And I know in some of the habit formation books and techniques, this is that celebration is something that like a little reward is used. So funnily enough, for me, I've taken to I have a hot tub that came with the house, that I love. And so I meditate in the hot tub every day for 10 minutes. And now it's just become this thing where it's like, hell yeah, because I'm in this warm water. It's 101 degrees, and I'm just floating in there and meditating, and it's just a beautiful experience. So every day I want to do it. Every day I want to do it. So it's like, can you find a way to create a moment of celebration, even if it's not in the thing you're doing? But so for me too, it's like, to get myself to go to the gym, sometimes I would be like, oh, I'm gonna have a steam after, or I will have a smoothie after. It's like, how do I tack on something that's like a celebration to kind of to get past that hump in the beginning, when it can be hard to stick to the discipline, because you're in that, like, where you have, if you think about those three elements, that discipline, faith, and energy, there's a certain time where you need to amp up the faith, because is this thing I'm doing each and every day really making a difference? I don't know,
Mhm.
I have no clue. Until you get to that place where you really start to reap the benefits. And a lot of the things we're talking about, you don't reap benefits out the gate. It takes a while. So
Yeah.
you need the faith, but is there a way to tack on a little reward? If you struggle with that being super disciplined. Anyway, that would
Yeah.
be the last
I,
thing I'd add on.
I love that you said that, because what you described is a form of habit stacking,
Yeah.
and it's something that I do too, especially if something is like outside of like alignment with my identity of the thing that I want to be, or I'm putting myself as being, or it's stuff that I find myself fighting with, right? you find chores that you don't like to do that you know you have to show up and do. Um, you can apply some of these habits in there. Like for instance, if you're going food shopping, put a podcast on. If you want to start listening to more podcasts and start to learn more, like you can do that, right? I think one of the things people have lost is like they lost their car time, right? So it's like they
Yeah.
had this place and people would just get in this like dazed and confused. And it's just like they wouldn't do it. Like I found car time was great. I got to be in the car. So why don't I use it to my benefit, right? Let's put on something. So I think attaching a reward to it is for one personality type. I think attaching a chore to it is another way of personality type. I think at the end of the day, that you still need the willpower to do it, right? And so, some of these things, whatever works for you, great. There's all approaches, and there's coaches like you and I who can help people get there, right? There's ways to
Yeah.
kind of work through that stuff, but like at the end of the day, I love you saying that because again, you're right. What works for me, if I'm like a really disciplined person, like I find comfort in that. It may be just a heck of a lot harder for someone else. So how do you
Yeah.
you do it? And so I think that's great. And on the flip side of that, I also think it's very important that you look at the things that you're doing, right? Like some things get so unconsciously competent. Like I found like I started doing all these things and they start build up and they take time. And then eventually you're kind of like, well, I can't fit another thing in my schedule. Like I can't do this, I can't do that. So it becomes harder because you're doing all these other things. Well, maybe you don't need to do those other things anymore, right? Maybe you don't need to meditate every day anymore, right? Maybe maybe you mix in some other stuff, right? And I find
Yeah.
myself with that in particular in my journey with health around working out. Like I associated doing more with being fitter when
Yeah.
I was a fool because all I did was look in the mirror. Like it was my nutrition and my sleep and my water, and nutrition being a big one, that was just as important with the working out, right? And I worked out less this past year, and I put a post out like I weighed myself January of 2020 and I was 250 pounds, and I weighed myself December 30th of this year and I was 25 pounds less. I was 225, and I worked out less, I worked out different,
Yeah.
but most importantly, my nutrition was
Yeah.
managed, right? So I think also like looking at things sometimes that maybe you can pull out of your schedule too,
Yeah.
a replacement, right? Oh, I do this. Well, I'm gonna not do this. I'm gonna switch and do this now instead. Also is another way. So
Yeah, that brings up, and maybe we just touch on this and talk about it next time too, because I do think it dovetails really nicely too in the world of work. Is I look at these things sometimes as scaffolding. Like you need to have this scaffolding to help you kind of build up the muscle and the foundation, and then you can remove the scaffolding. And this is a metaphor I use a lot in the workplace around implementing processes, implementing things in the context of a growing team. Like, you know, the 13 years I spent at Salesforce, from when it started kind of small to when it got to quite large, there was a lot. Like we implemented a lot of what I called scaffolding that at some point we tore down. And
right.
it's a beautiful thing to be able to tear that down because you don't need it anymore, right? Maybe that's the topic for next time, unless something more compelling comes up. And then we could
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about the world of work as well,
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. And I think so we leave on the note of like, listen, pick out something that, aligns with what you want to go do, right? What are those foundational disciplines that, and have faith that you should do, right?
Yeah.
It's like something that's sitting with you. It's like,
What's
what, I
your
probably
why?
could do this, right? Now just come up with a plan that can work with your schedule. Take ideas of associating and creating a reward immediately, or associate it or do it with a chore, or remove something from your schedule and put it in. Like so many things that you can do it. But the key then is break it into small, like make it small. Don't set outcomes that, you got to run a 4-minute mile when you first go out to run the mile, right? Like just the fact that you showed up and you actually put your sneakers on, like that is actually an accomplishment, right? So setting those things small, and then just committing yourself and finding ways to be able to just stack days will lead to feelings that you need to have faith in, that you're going to have really at the end of
Yeah.
the day. You
Yeah.
just have to have faith in it, right? And
That's what I
that's
love,
it.
because I feel like that's that missing piece and we don't talk about a lot, you know?
Yeah.
We talk about the mechanics and we don't talk about that, which is like at its essence, it's like on the two sides, it's like, why are you doing this in the first place? You know, it's like, I want to feel good, damn it. And then and then having faith that if you just show up each and every day, I'm gonna get to that point. You're gonna get to that point where you feel good, damn it, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like setting a car out and you start driving and then you end up in California. You're like, well, I got to I didn't want to go to California. I wanted to go to Chicago. Well, it's like, well, why didn't you focus your attention to Chicago? Oh, well, it's like, but that's the way people look at their lives. They just kind of let things just kind of move them in all these different directions and they end up to a place that they don't want to be at, right? Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So it's like you have control. You just need to align your focus and your faith in that you can achieve it. And once you do it, then you can start to your mind is good at that. Like it'll help you problem solve that, right? It's just you got to
yeah.
set your intention and intention, and intention ties to faith. So I
Yeah.
love
I
it. I think
love this
this is great.
framework.
Yeah,
Good
so let's
stuff.
build off that for next one. We'll be posting this out on our usual channels, and we look for feedback. And if there's something that resonates here, please let us know. If you have some successes of things that we've suggested, please let us know. And happy to have a conversation and talk about things that you find interesting. So looking forward to more. So
Yeah, it was lovely chatting with you again. So looking forward to next time, Larry.
always
Thanks.
a pleasure. All right, talk soon.
All right.